Welcome to another live stream, a bonus live stream from Save Your Sanity. Today we're going to talk about kind of things that go on all the time, but are particularly going on in this time when we're experiencing this virus condition. And that is that sometimes we get just a little more than we wanted of the people that we live with. And so my guest today is Kathy Hammond. You would have heard perhaps her podcast episode with me when we were talking about ass-kicking advice for stepmoms. And she has some great insights on relationships and kids and all of that. So I wanted her to join me. Welcome, Kathy.
Well, thanks for having me on your show again, Rhoberta. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's always good to talk about these things because they're top of mind for so many people. And right now, of course, we're kind of shut in while the world is shut down. But the things we're talking about apply all the time. If you get sort of too much of a good thing, too much time with the people that we say we love, whether those are adults or children, sometimes we can go a little stir crazy. So this applies even though we're making this at the time of the shutdown. So if you have questions, please type them in. We'd be happy to answer them. If you had an experience you want to tell us about, type that in. And if you're listening to the replay, you can do the same thing. We'll be monitoring the comments. So it really can be tough in these situations, and we get some rough patches. What's your experience with this, Kathy?
Well, in general, with I think that, I have so many different types of relationships, I have that, of course, with my husband. I have it with family members, I have it with extraneous family members that, not a family of my choice. It's always, when it's smooth sailing, you don't realize just how precious that time is during that time until you really hit another rough patch. And then when you're in it, it's like, you think that that's now interminable. But if we really think about that ebb and flow of relationships, so that this too shall pass. And it's just finding the best ways to be able to navigate that period of time.
Well, I really appreciate that point of view. And I was thinking too, I was a fairly young single mom, divorced with children. And at that time, I had two children who back to back, summer vacation, back to back got red measles.
Oh, gosh.
And so here we are in the warmest weather of the year. And for those who may not know, when red measles, you have to keep the house dark. So because it so affects the eyes. So summer holidays, all of that. And one child comes down with it. So we are hunkering in place, playing on the floor, doing things, sleeping, doing things, sleeping, doing things, just gets over it, and the next one comes down with it. So an entire month of being a single mom at home, not able to have anybody come in with 3 children. Oh, joy. So it could be something as simple as that. I remember going out under cover of darkness. My oldest child, she could manage when the others were asleep. And I would get on my bicycle and I would ride as hard as I could for 2 miles and then come back because, just let me do something to get her off this energy. And that's one of the things that we can do now, because the great joy is that you can always get out of the house and go for a walk, use energy, clear your mind, see something beautiful, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you need to be able to step away from it. I think we tend to, and I think maybe it's a woman thing, where we want to, just kind of ride the situation until there's a resolution. And sometimes that's just not the best strategy. So yes, getting on the bike, taking a walk, that's probably better medicine.
A little social distancing from those that are in the house with you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said generally for exercise in situations when there is a lot of tension. But of course,
Mhm.
now in this lockdown situation, we're quite free to go out for a walk. I go out for a walk with my hands in my pockets and leave it that way, and just do that, and everybody's quite respectful, and it's
Mhm.
working out well. But there are situations where people are quite afraid, and they're really
Mhm.
concerned
Yeah.
about what to do, or should I go out, or what can I possibly do? And so what do you think we could do about avoiding fearful thinking?
You know, um, I think a couple of things. One would be, of course, to recognize this too is going to, be in the past at some point here. And the second thing is, to if we're heeding the advice of, the people that are telling us what we should be doing, and just keeping like a 6 foot distance from someone. It doesn't mean that you need to disconnect completely from human beings. And I think maybe just even having a chat with your neighbor across the fence, or, across the street, even at a distance. I saw last night when I was doing a walk, and there were two women, and they had their little girls each, and they were on the opposite corners, and they had the girls out there drawing with chalk, and really nice things like "be happy, don't worry, all rainbows and things." And the moms were just, chatting, and they were really at a distance. So when we came walking up, I had to walk through the middle of the street so that I had the distance on both sides, right? And they thought that was amusing. But everybody just, being able to, you have a little bit of a connection there. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
about total isolation, because you don't need to totally isolate.
Yeah, and
So,
I think there's a lot of fear right now, and even though we weren't going to talk about the coronavirus, we are very top of mind. But I think there is a lot of fear that the generalized information. I notice
yeah.
that people are saying, "Oh, well, you got to wash your hands every 20 minutes, and you have to do this, and you have to do the other thing." Don't forget that if you're staying at home, you don't have to wash your hands every 20 minutes. You're in your
Right.
environment.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Think about
But
that.
yeah, and I think, really the fear is, it really just comes from the unknown. And if we look at, what we're able to control in our environment at that moment in time, regardless of what it is, to watch a movie, to call up a friend, to do something, I think a lot of that can push a lot of that fear out of there as well, because you can support one another. And that's, and even if you're feeling a little anxious, I mean, I had a friend who was feeling a little anxious over the weekend, and I said, it's it's really not as critical to us specifically in that moment of, like what is going on. So it's like there's no point in being afraid of
Right.
anything at that moment. You're in your house, you're able to turn on, like we were talking earlier about Netflix, turn on Netflix. You're not afraid, at that moment.
Right.
So it's like distracting yourself, and getting involved, and do something that maybe you've been thinking about doing. Bake some bread, do some arts and crafts, do something else that's going to take your mind off of whatever issue. I'm not talking just about the coronavirus. I'm just thinking of things that you can do in the house at this time.
Mm-hmm. And
And yes, go ahead.
I think that that whole thing of the things we say to ourselves, oh, if only I had more time, I would. Okay, you have the time now. Would you?
Uh, yes,
Right? Like,
right.
there's never going to be a time when you have more time than you have right now in the home. Now, you may have children home and all kinds of things that is,
Mhm.
complicates factors, but you are at home. I've seen several graphics on Facebook saying for all those men who couldn't do their honeydew list because they would do it when they had more time are now in trouble, right?
Right. Exactly.
But I think every one of us has to give ourselves a little prod in that direction. What did I say I would do if I had the time to do it?
Mhm.
And do you have that time now? Because if it was an excuse, it's good to fess up right now and say, I'm never going to do that.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
And get honest with yourself, because you'll never
Mhm.
probably have more time than you have right now.
And because there's not a lot of people who can come around you, you're not obligated to a lot of other people at this time, which is,
Mm,
that's a real handy excuse that a lot of us use. Oh, we're being pulled in 20 directions by my mother, my sister, my neighbor, whatever it might be. And this way, it's in this time, it's kind of like a time to reset.
mm,
So, and in such a situation, I mean, unless you're facing some dire medical consequence, it really gives some time for introspection.
Yeah, cocooning is a really good thing to do
Mhm,
right now, to give yourself permission to sleep and to rest and to
mhm,
reflect. That's one of the
mhm,
things that people say they don't have as much time as they'd like for. And just taking care of yourself. I was putting on something on Facebook the other day. I was getting way too many messages that were telling me sort of the shoulds of, you've got this time, you should be doing this. If you were wise, you'd be doing this. And I thought, hey, I don't need a parent. Go away.
mhm,
You have no idea what's wise for me. You don't know about my situation. I happen to be immunocompromised. I
mhm,
live like that. I'm not going around people. I am
mhm.
not touching surfaces people are touching. So you don't know what's wise for me. And if you think you need to make major pronouncements on Facebook about what wise people are doing right now, aside from washing their hands and staying away from other humans, back off. Not interested.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And of course, hindsight too is 2020 when things that we should have done, we should have, all moved our stocks into money market right about 3, 4 weeks ago. So a
Yeah,
lot of things we should have done.
well, I just leave mine there. And I was pretty happy about that. But, another thing is never forget the power of laughter. If you're at home with somebody, a healthy person, we're going to talk
Mhm.
about toxic relationships in a
Yeah.
minute, of course. But if you're home with a relatively healthy person and things are getting a little tense, do something silly. Get your silly on for a bit. Laugh at yourself. Do something ridiculous. Show up in a stupid hat. Do whatever will bring a little levity to the home. Let the kids laugh. Let everybody laugh. Let your hair down. Be silly.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that's probably good advice for every day.
Oh, I think so too. But, we just get into that push, that grind. Like,
Mhm,
I think that the world kind of has a mandate. The mandate from magazines and e-zines and speakers and all is be more, do more, have more, repeat. We just get
mhm.
into that
Yeah.
push. And for us to be relieved from that push, even though we're pushed a little at home,
Mhm,
is a welcome moment to say, whoa, how do I feel when I'm not in the grind?
mhm. Yeah, I personally, I feel like when I've got my foot on the pedal every minute of the day, can't take my eyes off of anything. I mean, I have to constantly be paying attention to everything because if I don't, then, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. So now this time there's more of a calm, it's, I mean, yes, we're protecting ourselves here at home and, we're not out touching anything or seeing other people, but I'm not taking myself so seriously. And,
Mm-hmm.
and this puts a lot of things in perspective. When everything comes to a grinding halt, and that things can be over in a flash. Just,
Yeah.
your job could be gone, a relationship could be gone. I mean, anything could happen. And we're just without control. It reminds me of a movie that the Miracle at St. Anna, and there was a line in there. They say that people pay for control, for safety,
Mm.
something like that. And he's like, but essentially, it's an illusion. it's things are going to happen. And so, and once you realize that, I think you can kind of like get your shoulders down a little bit and just go with it, and just relax. And just do things right now. We have to do them day by day. I think maybe a lot of our problems are because we're projecting into the future, and we have no control over what's going to happen. So, I mean, a month ago, who would have thought, this would be affecting us?
Well, even 2 weeks ago, when our biggest thing was that there was Friday the 13th and the time change in the same week, how are we going to cope? I mean, who knew what was coming down the pike at that moment?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we have opportunities to look at life differently right now. Great to have a little perspective and a little distance from daily life. Many people have that right now, even if it is enforced and they didn't welcome it. But the thing is, just as you were saying, in this present moment, here's the circumstance. And that's true in any present moment. And you're deciding what to use it for, how to be and who to be. And I think that's important. And the opportunity to withdraw and to create space, even if you have a house full of children, let everybody have quiet time. Do something that says, all right, we're all going to read for 20 minutes. So we're going to see how long we can go without speaking, and the first person who speaks has to clean the toilet or something. Do something, but there's another. I love this piece from Cahill Gibran, and he said, let there be spaces in your togetherness. He was writing about marriage. Let there be spaces in that togetherness, that you don't have to be on the same page at every minute, in the same moment, in the same room, having the same conversation. You can create space in your relationship, because going back to the original topic of what to do in rough patches, sometimes we just need to let our partner or a child, or older child particularly, know that we want to continue the conversation, but just not right now. So let me say something from a psychological perspective. We have a fear of abandonment built into us from the time that we're born. And that's because we're not like horses and cows. We don't get spit out of our mother, licked up off, and then we leap up and run around the meadow and can play and run and transport and find food. We're different than that. We're blobs. We know we're blobs. We know we need those giants to take care of us, to bring us food and take care of us. So we have kind of a built-in fear of abandonment. And so it's important for us to realize that when our partner or our parent or whomever says, I need to take a little time apart, I just need to go to my room for 20 minutes, or I need to go for a walk. One of the big things that you can do at that moment is to remember that fear of abandonment and tell someone when you'll be back. Okay, I'm going to do it for this long, or I'll talk to you at 6 o'clock, or whatever, because otherwise, that big coup de grace that people have when they have a fight, when a couple has a fight and somebody does the big motion and slams the door and walks out. That's abandonment. That's saying, I'll show you. You don't know where I am. You don't know when I'm coming back. Well, here we are in a situation where hopefully you're not going very far. But it's still important to say, I'm not leaving you. I'm taking time for me. And we can reconvene. There are things that we can practice in the time when we're together in a little tighter fashion that will serve us well all the time.
I like that. I was thinking about that in any past argument if one of us stormed off. It's been infrequently, but you're right. Yeah, that's I hadn't thought of it that way in terms of abandonment.
Big power move. Big power move, and scary, especially if the person who's been left behind has been in any kind of abuse. So let's go on and talk about toxic relationships, because what could be happening now in homes where there is abuse of any kind, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, When our tempers get a little higher, when we get a little agitated, when we're living at a higher level of stress, these things are going to show up more frequently. Problematic, right? And if there already is existing abuse in the home, very, very scary, you know? So when there is this kind of situation that is underlying where people don't really want to go home,
Mhm.
and then they have to go home, we are actually seeing, and we're seeing it reported in the news and on social media, of the rise in domestic violence. And this is very important. So let's talk about things that you can do if you're in this situation. Yeah.
You know, I think, in a case like that, I think you have to remove yourself from danger if it's a dangerous situation. If it's, and even if it's, I mean, physically remove yourself somehow, some way. If it's verbal or emotional abuse, I think that, and if you're confined to the same house on this, um, you know, and I think this is where your information, what you can impart here, Rhoberta, is going to be invaluable, because I think everyone would be at a loss. I mean, unless you're able to actually, I mean, yes, maybe you could remove yourself to a backyard, but if you're in an apartment and don't have the room to be able to physically separate, even if you're just, I mean, not in physical danger, but in a case like that, yes, what would a person, what are some really great strategies? I think I know what I might do, but I don't know that would actually be, a good solution. I might be throwing oil onto the fire, gas on the fire.
Well, we could talk about what it is you might do, and I'll certainly give you my thoughts on it. But one of the things that's really important, and I did my podcast on it this last Sunday, and it's called Housebound with a Hijackal, 10 Truths You Have to Accept. Because when you're with a very difficult person, and I call those people hijackals, as everybody knows, you never poke a hijackal. There is no percentage in poking a hijackal. They'll go off like a Roman candle all by themselves, but don't poke them because that's not going to help. So when we get into situations and there's power over, which is happening in the hijackal situation, one of the things that the rest of the family wants to do is to lie low. To really be sure that they're not pushing any buttons. And I know that's not fair. It's not fair. You should be able to say what you want and be who you are. But in a situation where there is that level of tension and there's the possibility of eruption, it's a good idea to just know, all right, the truth is that the difficult person, the toxic person, the hijackal person is a big baby. They're going to be, it's all about me, and I'm afraid I'm going to get sick, and you're invading my space, and you're making too much noise, and my home should be my castle, and all of that stuff. And yet there's other people there who have the same rights, but they're going to make it all about them.com. And then they're going to be the one who is in the superlative business. Like, it's affecting me the most of everybody. I'm having the worst time. It's the greatest impact on my business. This should never happen. This should always happen. You never. You always. It's always going to be extremes.
Mhm.
So knowing that, don't bother responding to it. It's just the way they're going to express themselves. Just remind yourself, I'm observing. Oh, yes, that's what hijackals do. And look at that. The hijackal is doing that. And
Mhm.
if you can keep yourself in that observe mode rather than getting sucked into it, you have more hope of keeping your sense of center.
Mhm.
And that's very, very important, particularly in enforced times of being together. But what also is important is that if there is a history of abuse, children, like, what about that? Um, what if they're stuck there, right? Um, what if the children are being abused and now is an opportunity for more of it?
Hmm.
What can children do? Very, very little. Very
Yeah.
little because they become
Hmm.
objectified.
Yeah, there was, in the saying, of course, that the people, the first line of defense, generally for educators that would be able to see that the children were having a difficult time, and now that that's been, removed, that creates such a huge problem, and not even just the an actual abusive situation, but just neglect. And
Mhm.
so it's intensified when they don't have, anyone else looking out for them. I think perhaps maybe as citizens, if we even suspect it, of that it's going on in someone's home, that we have a pretty good idea. Is that something that you think that, I mean, because we wouldn't know 100%, but we might have an inkling. Would that be something that where we should report it? Yeah.
Well, if we have a sense, what's going to happen in that reporting process
Mhm.
is that they can't do anything unless they catch it. But
Mhm.
the report itself adds weight.
Mhm.
So, the police may say, well, we can't do anything unless you can see something or hear something.
Mhm.
But the fact that well, here in California, they have to record the call. They have to record that it happened. There was concern. So that's an important thing. But another thing is that if you are related to these children and you believe this is happening, then
Mhm.
get out FaceTime or get on Zoom or do
Mhm.
something and have a visit with the family and say, "Oh, I haven't seen Bobby around for a while.
Mhm.
Let me talk. Let me see how he's grown." And engage so the family of course, don't have to take your call, but
Right.
if they do, they're at least aware that they're going to put on a level of normalcy for a moment or two,
Mhm.
which is a respite for children.
Mhm.
And if you demonstrate interest in the child, you give the child a little lift that, oh, it was good to see you. And are you having a good time? And what's happening? And the child gets an opportunity to report out. And you can watch the child. So it is an important thing to consider, how can you make a difference if you suspect that there may be trouble in a home?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a really great idea. I think, yeah, to be able to somehow connect and to be able to, if you can get a kid on camera, all the better, so that you can see, if
Hmm.
there's any kind of distress. Yeah, no, it's a tough situation. I think I mean, I think even in the best of times, it's really. I mean, you see people who, like, they say you don't know anyone until you go on vacation with them. Because now you're really, 24/7. Everything that you're doing, and that's when you're supposed to be having a good time. So, but when you're trying to just carry on your life and people working from home and you've got kids underfoot and, I mean, all these different stressors, I think it's one of those deep breathing times right
Oh, for
now.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is because there is an opportunity for so much to go well and an
Yeah.
opportunity for so much to go sideways. And it does bring up a question that I think that we need to talk about are what are the protocols right now for shared custody? What if the children are supposed to be going back and forth between two parents? And there are different points of view on this in the small bit of research that I did. One person locally here in San Diego, an attorney, said that basically this is not extraordinary and you have to
Mhm.
continue with it or be in contempt. But I've also read opinions that say this is extraordinary and you have to do what is in the best interest of the child, which is the overarching mandate for shared protocol or shared
Mhm.
custody at any time, is we're supposed to be doing what's in the best interest of the children. So knowing that we can make decisions here, and if we happen to be with a hijackal, they're going to be upset anyway. So whether you give them, they're going to be like, why would I be having them? You don't give
Mhm.
them as you should be giving them. I mean, you
Right.
can't get it right with a hijackal. So let's talk about the non-hijackal situation with the transfer of children. Sometimes it's not going to be wise, is it?
It really depends upon I think the environment in each of the parents' homes. Is someone still going to work
Right.
and being exposed and then coming back in? Then now and I think now that we have more information about where this could affect young. We used to think it was just for elderly people to the coronavirus having the larger impact, but now that we see that children are also contracting this. So, and I think that I think in situations where you just have battling parents, I think perfect opportunity for exercising power and just really, screwing with the other person in this. And again, it goes back to this is, of course, impacting the kids. Would I want to keep them as safe as possible? Absolutely. Are there different ways that you can handle things? Yes. I mean, you can, yes, keep the kids saying, if you have that agreement, keep them at one place and then you can do video on that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have friends, they're grandparents and they were always seeing their kids, but every day they FaceTime, with their grandchildren.
Yeah.
And so that they're really keeping that connection because it's going to go for a while. And and I think if parents are going to be mature about this, it's then you have to realize, I mean, it's like it is going to have to be in the best interest of the kids. And if you go a month where you don't see them, like every other weekend or something, it's not the end of the world. If you put them in a situation where something happens to them because of this, then you really will not be seeing them forever. So it's not worth it to the kids. Plus, the kids are also feeling all that angst on top of that, because here's another thing that mom or dad can use to, and as they, to play this game with one another.
Yes, and to make us pawns in the
Yes.
game. And that's a difficulty. And the problem for the children too is that they have both parents' DNA. They want to please both parents. They don't want to choose between their parents in most cases. And so if we could just be a little more adult in these situations, that all right, what is in the highest and best interest for the well-being of the children? Well, certainly we have technology that will take care of it. You can play games online with your children. You can have a
Mhm.
watch party. You can all join in and watch the same movie together
Right.
online. You can do all kinds of things. And yeah, maybe you can't hug them. But if you so wisely brought up, if one parent is still going out to work and the other is cocooned at home, then leave the children where they're safest rather than take the risk of bringing them a bug.
Yes.
I've seen people now, because of course we're all hypersensitive to social media and the news, but I've seen people who are doing absurd things. Like there are people, now I heard of a church the other day that has 1,000 members and they're
Yeah.
continuing to meet. Okay, well, give your head a bit of a shake. Whatever your faith situation is, it is still not wise to have good scientific data to stay 6 feet apart and then go into a situation where you're 12 inches apart.
Hmm.
It isn't wise. So, would you put your children in that jeopardy? Would you make that decision on behalf of your children? That's not very fair. It really isn't very fair.
No.
And no matter what your faith is, that child is in your keeping for its well being.
Mhm.
And it's very important for us to make mature decisions that are non emotionally based decisions for the well being of ourselves and our children and our relationships. And yeah, we're physical bodies and we're going to have tension and we're going to have hormone washes and we're going to be in fear and flight and we're going to be concerned maybe Losing a position is imminent. Maybe we don't have any savings. We're worried about where to get food. All these things are very, very real. But the fact of the matter is, as you said so wisely earlier, Kathy, we are going to get through it. It may take a while. Hopefully, we'll all pull together and make sure everybody gets through it in the best possible way. But what it speaks to, and why I wanted to discuss this today, is when there isn't a pandemic, just think you can get through rough patches in any relationship with enough willingness and skill. You really can.
Oh, absolutely. And it may take some time to do that. I think the when you look at, because people, we want everything instantly in our society today. We want everything resolved. If I were to go, be one of, come to see you, I'd want, okay, one session, I want to be cured, right? Okay.
I don't do one session shots.
And yeah, well, usually, it's like I went for a massage once. I had all these knots and everything else. And he said, it took you more than just one day to get this. It'll probably take some time to work all this out. And, and it's the same, but it's being realistic about what you can actually achieve in the course of a day. And again, and especially now, taking things day by day and realizing that, everyone else, even people that you're having problems with, they're also struggling with all of these other things that you're struggling with. So maybe even just a little bit empathy, because it's going to amp them up even more if they're already agitated people. And that includes, like parents, if you're exchanging, your children and or not, there's just, if we start thinking maybe less of ourselves and start thinking a little bit more about others, we will have a different viewpoint and we'll behave differently. Yeah, we'll all get through this.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
I think it's very important for us to remember that this is a time to think less about me and more about we. Because even when we don't have a pandemic, there are always three people in every relationship. There's the two human me's, and then there's the we, the relationship. And all three have to be taken care of simultaneously. And sometimes we forget that when we want to get in the push and pull of me or me or me or me. What's better for the we? And we do need to remember that. It's very important. So I think we could talk about all these things for a very, very long time. But I want to remind you, I've been talking with Kathy Hammond. She's the author of Ass Kicking Advice for Stepmoms. And I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. You can find me of course, you find Kathy there at Kathy Hammond Books, and you can find me at transformingrelationship.com. And all this today is being brought to you because of my podcast, Save Your Sanity. So go and find it. Thank you so much for being my guest today, Kathy.
Oh, thanks, Rhoberta. I always enjoy speaking with you.
We had a great conversation. And remember that if you have questions for either Kathy or I, we'll be looking in to see what's going on in the feed on this page or on YouTube, which is also available to you. So we wish you well, we wish you peace, and we wish you a big deep breath to know that you can solve a problem when you're willing. Take good care.